Samuel Blackwood, a broke furniture craftsman, finds purpose in giving his remaining money to a widow and her 5 starving children. Will Samuel discover that the emptiest hands can give the most when the small Missouri town whispers behind their backs and threatens their little sanctuary? Acts 1 and 2 of The Worth of Empty Hands feature a hat falling down Main Street in the biting November wind. Samuel Blackwood rushed for it, missing by inches as another breeze threw it around the corner. 3 children giggled from the protection of the general store porch, his final nice hat gone with everything else. A loud murmur reminded old Blackwood of another loss. Samuel stiffened, ignoring the pity looks. It had been about a day since he ate, and his stomach growled. The scent of Wilson's bakery bread made him salivate, but his pocket change wouldn't go far. Not today. The town hall clock struck 4. Samuel left town for the mountain cemetery in his scuffed, cracked boots. He breathed in white puffs that faded in the afternoon light as the route steepened. His feet crunched dead leaves, nature's fragile warning that everything lovely falls. Mr. Blackwood called Elijah, the elderly gravedigger, resting on his shovel afternoon. Returning to visit the wife, Samuel nodded, wordless due to a lump in his throat. 6 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days since Mary's burial. She died so swiftly from fever that she couldn't say goodbye. Looking at the darkening sky, Elijah warned of changing weather. Storm imminent. Samuel promised a short visit. Elijah glanced at Samuel's skinny figure, even though he had nowhere to be. My Martha cooked extra stew tonight. We welcome you to our table. The kindness nearly broke him. Sam shook his head. Thanks, but I'm all right. Really, he found the untruth bitter. Mary's tomb was under an oak tree's branches. Samuel knelt beside the headstone, brushing leaves from the marble. Her name was traced by his fingers with dates revealing her 42-year life. Hi, sweetheart, he whispered. My day was intriguing. He routinely spoke to her grave. He only let his meticulously built mask slip once. Samuel Blackwood could admit his failure with only the dead as witnesses. I tried Johnson's Mill today. They're not hiring. Watching his breath escape, he sighed. Neither is the livery stable or railroad office. Samuel pulled a crumpled paper from his pocket. The red stamp on its face is apparent. Eviction notice. I can't keep our room. The landlord's patient. His voice broke. My destination is unknown. A 3-generation family furniture shop was now owned by the bank. Samuel tried to save it after Mary got sick, selling their home and most possessions to pay for ineffective doctors. After mounting debts and losing customers, the bank took everything. Never believed this would happen, he said, stroking his silver hair. Your dad constantly said I wasn't good enough. Perhaps he was right. A large raindrop hit the headstone, and another. The storm Elijah warned was coming swiftly. Samuel struggled to stand and replied, I should go. The cold earth hurt his knees. Felt twice his age at 46. He noticed something as he left, a tiny blue blossom growing despite the frost that killed everything else. Samuel carefully removed it and placed it under Mary's tombstone. Remember Porter's Creek picnic? All those blue blooms. The memory made him smile. You built me a crown of them, calling me a woodland king. Thunder rumbled away. He muttered, I miss you 24/7. Samuel returned down the hill to heavy rain. By Main Street, his coat was drenched and his old hat was leaking. Shops closed, lanterns extinguished one by one. Samuel paused outside his old furniture store. He saw Albert Conway, the new owner, directing workers to reorganize the display through the windows. The door's sign no longer read Blackwood Fine Furnishings. It proclaimed Conway's best furniture. Conway noticed Samuel observing. He carefully turned his back, making an arrogant face. Shame burned worse than fever. Conway sought to buy the Blackwood business for years. He now owned it and all the custom furniture designs that had made Blackwood famous in the county. Sam forced himself to go. Conflict would be harmful. He had more important issues, like where to sleep once the landlord locked him out tomorrow. The rain increased as he walked to his leased room above Miller's feed shop. Each stride squished his socks as water poured through his boots. A sad, lonely dog barked in the distance. Samuel Blackwood. He turned to see Reverend Phillips rushing at him, collar up against rain. He held an umbrella with gloves. Samuel nodded. Reverend. He was Phillips's church deacon. Now he couldn't stand to attend services, sit alone in the pew he shared with Mary, and endure the pitying looks. Phillips held the umbrella over them and said, I've been looking for you. Mrs. Phillips found these in the parsonage storage room while cleaning. He handed Samuel a little brown paper packet. "Mary's preserves," Phillips said. "She brought them to last year's harvest celebration. They were overlooked in all the uneasy." He stopped, or Samuel ended the catastrophe for him. Phillips coughed. "They're good. Blackberry, I think. Mary made the best county preserves." Samuel contemplated the jars, recalling Mary in their kitchen, hair back, sleeves up, and the wonderful smell of cooking fruit filling their home. His breath was taken away by the vivid memory. He succeeded, "Thank you." Phillips paused. "I noticed, Samuel," Mrs. Phillips said. "You eat regularly?" Though sincere, the concern hurt Samuel's pride. "I'm managing. Our church has funds for the needy." "Yes, I manage." Samuel cut him too sharply, softened his tone. "Reverend, I appreciate your compassion." Phillips was skeptical but didn't argue. "If you change your mind, we're always here to help." Samuel nodded, holding the priceless jars. "And Samuel?" Phillips said, "God hasn't forgotten you, even if it seems so." Samuel stood in the rain, wondering if that was real as the Reverend ran away. God seemed distant lately. Under his weight, his room steps creaked. Samuel held the key awkwardly with icy fingers. Inside wasn't warmer than outside, but it was dry. At least he had refuge one more night. The room had a bed, a table with one chair, a small stove, and a trunk with his remaining belongings. The warm glow of Samuel's lantern repelled the darkness. After placing Mary's preserves on the table, he removed his damp coat and hung it near the stove. He took a bedspread from the trunk. Mary sewed her wedding quilt from special fabric remnants, a piece of her mother's garment, Samuel's first suit, and squares from their first home's drapes. Wrapping it across his shoulders, he felt its comforting weight. A crackling eviction notice was in his pocket. Tomorrow at 12 he must leave. Then what? Samuel cautiously opened a preserves jar at the table. Sweet blackberry smell filled the tiny space. He dipped his finger and tasted sugar, fruit, and summer light. His eyes welled. "Oh, Mary," he whispered. "How will I survive without you?" Stormy rain battered the single window outside. Samuel considered Mary's grave's blue flower. It appeared fragile, despite winter, how determined to bloom. He wondered if he still had that strength. He would learn tomorrow. Market sounds were interrupted by a child's cough. Samuel almost missed it counting his pennies. 17 cents, too little for bread and cheese. His stomach grumbled. He was used to ignoring its demands. "Sir, kindly." 1 penny for milk. Samuel peered down to see a tiny child with tangled blonde hair and old-looking eyes. She was no older than 6. She carried an adult's anxiety on her small shoulders. "For my younger brother," she said, pointing across the square. She pointed to a woman on an overturned crate. Samuel followed. More kids gathered around her like chicks around a hen. Little one, covered in a ragged blanket, moaned with hunger. "Where's Dad, kid?" Samuel questioned, bending to her level despite his sore knees. She said simply, "Heaven. Mama says your wife is." He felt the term physically. Samuel again regarded the woman across the square. She was soothing the sobbing infant while watching the female who approached him. The dark rings under her eyes were visible from this distance, carefully maintaining her dignity despite her circumstances. "Your name?" asking the girl. "Emma," she said. "Emma Reed, my mother, brothers, and sister." Samuel gazed at his 17 cents. Then Emma Reed's expectant expression. He pressed the cash into her little hand with a non-reluctant sigh. "Get milk for your brother." Emma's eyes grew. "Everything, sir? All of it?" Samuel confirmed, astonished by his chest lightness as he gave his last money. Emma shouted, "God bless you," clutching the cash as she ran to her family. Samuel followed for some reason. He may have been curious, or had nowhere else to go. He approached, and the woman glanced up, wary but kind. Samuel greetingly said, "Your daughter thinks you've lost your husband. Sorry for your problem." She nodded after staring at him. "Thanks for aiding us." She spoke softly but clearly, commanding attention without demanding it. "Hi, Abigail Reed, Samuel Blackwood." He tipped his hat, suddenly self-conscious of his ragtag appearance. The oldest boy, perhaps 10, stepped slightly in front of his mother. "We don't need charity," he said, though his eyes betrayed him, straying to Emma's money. Abigail gently reminded William to behave. "Samuel, it's not charity. It's—" He stopped, seeking for words. "Helping with an empty hand." Abigail's rejoinder was cut short by thunder. The outdoor market was threatened by dark clouds while they talked. Samuel pointlessly observed rain. Have shelter? He learned everything from Abigail's hesitancy. Finally, she answered, we'll manage. The first drips were frigid and big. Market shoppers rushed to stow, protect, and hide their products. Reed kids cuddled with Mom. Their flimsy blankets offered little protection. Samuel called out, come with me. Nearby is a coffee cafe. We can endure the worst. Can't afford, Abigail said. Samuel interrupted with his treat, but he didn't know how to pay. Please. Maybe it was his earnestness or the steady rain. But Abigail nodded. Kids, keep close. Thank you, Mr. Blackwood. Samuel, he corrected, leading the way across the fast, emptying market square. The coffee shop was filled with people seeking sanctuary from the sudden storm. Heads turned as Samuel held the door for Abigail and her 5 children. He felt the eyes, heard the whispering begin. Isn't that Samuel Blackwood? Mary's husband. Those children aren't his. Who's the woman? Samuel straightened his shoulders and approached the counter. The owner, Mrs. Patterson, arched an eyebrow but said nothing when he requested a table. And some milk for the baby, he added, nodding to the smallest Reed child, who continued to fuss in Abigail's arms. Mrs. Patterson's eyes softened somewhat at the sight of the newborn. She directed them to a corner table partially hidden by a wooden screen. I'll bring the milk immediately away. An uneasy hush followed seating. William, the 3 older Reed children, and twin girls about 8 peered at Samuel with wonder. Emma smiled shyly when she approached him in the market. Thanks again, Abigail responded, gently bouncing the whining baby. This is kind. Samuel said it's nothing, but they both knew it wasn't. Your baby's age? Jacob is 10 months, Abigail said, softening her face as she stared at her son. 8-year-old twins Martha and Mary. Emma is 6, William 10. The synchronicity made Samuel smile. Mary was my wife. Was? Abigail inquired, then apologized. Sorry, not my business. Samuel just stated that she died 6 months prior. Abigail nodded, understanding. My husband James died of pneumonia 2 months ago. We traveled east for work after losing our farm. Mrs. Patterson brought cups and a little pitcher of milk. After placing them on the table, she hesitated. Will you order more, Mr. Blackwood? Samuel's mind raced. He gave Emma his last coins. Thanks for the milk for now. Mrs. Patterson's lips shrank. Don't confuse this with a charity. I cannot allow tables to be taken without payment. Abigail took a tiny coin from her tattered boot before Samuel could answer. Please bring us coffee to share. Mrs. Patterson sniffed the coin and left. Abigail tenderly poured milk for baby Jacob while Samuel watched. You didn't have to, he whispered. She repeated his words, one empty hand helping another. Also, I've been saving that penny for emergencies. And this counts? She smiled rarely, getting to sit somewhere warm and dry? Absolutely. Samuel smiled back, his first since months. He was surprised, like finding a treasure in a dusty nook. Jacob gladly drank the milk, his crying subsiding. Older children watched the other customers with curious eyes, remaining quiet. The window showed the rain had turned into a torrent, turning the dirt streets into muck. Where are you staying? Samuel inquired softly. With her children in mind, Abigail hesitated. We visited my sister in Springfield, who has 7, way too much. Cleared her throat, passing through, seeking for work. Samuel understood her silence. They were lost. The realization sank into his chest. And you? Abigail asked, trying to change the subject. Originally from here? Samuel confirmed birth and upbringing. My family owned a furniture store for 3 generations. Elegant Blackwood furniture. Had. Abigail repeated his query. Samuel said the bank owns it after Mary got sick and paid the bills. He stopped, not wanting to burden this woman with his problems when she had enough. Mrs. Patterson brought 1 cup of coffee. She thanked her nicely and passed the cup to Samuel. He argued for ladies first. I insist, she said. You seem to need it more than me. Samuel wanted to argue but lacked enthusiasm. He felt warm in places that had been frigid for too long from the coffee. He returned the cup to Abigail after a few sips. He said, your turn. Fair is fair. Emma lay sleepily against her mother's side as Abigail drank coffee. All the kids were dozing off due to the shop's warmth and rain on the windows. Samuel murmured, they're exhausted. Abigail agreed that a lengthy journey makes sleep difficult. She stopped, but Samuel understood. He recommended a Cedar Street rooming house for chilly, hungry, or terrified people. Mrs. Winslow charges fairly. We couldn't demand. Samuel said paying isn't an imposition. A capable mother and a robust boy like William must find work in a town of size. William straightened when his name was spoken. I can work, he said. Animals, reading, and ciphering are my strengths. Samuel's heart twisted at the boy's pride. He recalls wanting to prove himself to aid his family at that age. Samuel said sincerely, I'm sure a youngster who can read and work with animals would benefit many local businesses. The new owner of Samuel's coffee shop, Albert Conway, entered with a rush of wind. Conway shook water from his costly coat and looked around the room for Samuel. Taking in the Reed family, his countenance showed surprise and then hatred. He welcomed Blackwood coolly at their table. I see new buddies. Sam straightened his chair. In Conway, Abigail sensed stress and held baby Jacob. Conway looked at the Reed kids with contempt. Mrs. Patterson usually sets a standard for her business. I'm shocked she allowed that. His words implied Abigail and her children. Samuel's fists were under the table. He mentioned his guests are Mrs. Reed and her family. Though angry, he kept his voice level. Just going through town. Yes, sooner is preferable. Conway smiled coldly. We have enough problems without taking in stray dogs. William stood up halfway. Anger filled his young face, but Abigail restrained him. William, it's okay, she whispered. Conway has a right to say. Conway laughed without humor. At least the boy has spirit, unlike some. He focused on Samuel, fall of the powerful. Mrs. Patterson, Blackwood, store owner to... You're what now? Mrs. Patterson joined Conway before Samuel could respond. Mr. Conway, your customary table is ready, she added, apologizing to Samuel. Excellent. Conway adjusted his waistcoat. Mrs. Patterson, watch your other customers. Some seem likely to steal the silverware. With a grin, he followed Mrs. Patterson to a beautiful fireside table. Samuel's face flushed with shame and wrath. I'm sorry, he told Abigail. Albert Conway. Man who values stuff. For him, Abigail finished. I've known several like him. Samuel's fury turned to admiration when she handled Conway's disrespect with elegance. This woman lost her home, spouse, and security. She kept her head high and preserved her kids' pride. The rain continued outside. From the window, they saw mud torrents in the streets. Emma was sleeping on her mother's lap, and William's eyes were heavy. Abigail suggested we go. Samuel knew, but she didn't know where they were going. Enough of our pressure. In this weather, where will you go? Samuel inquired softly. Abigail didn't respond, which was plenty. Though unaware, Samuel made a decision that changed everything. He stated he had a room, small but dry, until the storm passes tonight. We couldn't. Samuel interrupted. Please, She attempted to convey his desire to help this family. Words didn't come. He concluded, please let me do this. Abigail pondered his honesty against her children's needs as she observed his face. Finally, she consented tonight. We'll pay you back, there's no debt. Samuel stood, feeling strangely light despite giving away his last money and surrendering his sole home. Head out before it gets worse. Samuel saw Conway eyeing them from his fireside table with a calculating gaze as they prepared for the storm. Samuel was chilled by that glance, not the weather. What awaits tomorrow? Samuel was clueless. For the first time in months, uncertainty felt hopeful. Is this our new dad, Mama? Like smoke, Emma's innocent query filled the tight space. 7 people struggled to fit through the one window as the rain hammered against it. Samuel halted halfway through, hanging his soaking coat on the single chair, while Abigail's cheeks turned scarlet. No, Emma, she said hurriedly. Mr. Blackwood is kindly sheltering us from the storm. Mind your manners. William glared near the door, evidently uncomfortable and ready to defend his family. Martha and Mary, the twins, whispered and watched Samuel with interested eyes from the floor. Jacob had finally fallen asleep on Abigail's shoulder, his tiny face serene for the first time since Samuel met them. Emma looked down at her worn shoes and murmured, Sorry, Mr. Blackwood. My mother believes I ask too many questions. Samuel bent down to her level, smiling. Emma, questions teach us about the world. Never regret wanting to know. Her response was like brightness through clouds. The stove hardly heated, but it was better than nothing. Without money to buy additional coal, Samuel added the last of his to the dwindling embers. You'll need the bed, he said Abigail without looking at her. You and the kids can sleep there. I'll be all right on floor. Abigail said we couldn't take your bed. Enough of our pressure. Samuel faced her. Mary, please, swallowed hard. Mary would want me to insist. Unspoken, they acknowledged shared pain and dignity despite all. One nod from Abigail. Thank you. Samuel found Mary's bridal quilt and his only other blanket in the trunk. He gave Abigail the quilt for you. It's warmer than appears. William approached warily as Samuel set up his floor bed. Formal and practiced, my father encouraged me to always repay help. I can clean boots. Their mud is horrible. Samuel checked his muddy footwear. It would help, William. Thank you. Nodding solemnly, the youngster worked with a dedication that reminded Samuel cruelly of himself at that age. Samuel opened his trunk at the tiny table while the kids settled. He took a leather pouch from a secret slot near the bottom. William noticed everything with his keen eyes. What's that? Samuel hesitated to respond. Something I saved, in case of emergency. The pouch held his father's gold pocket watch. It was his only valuable possession after Mary's wedding ring. Even after selling everything to pay Mary's medical bills, he couldn't part with it. Samuel told Abigail he'd find you all housing tomorrow. A dwelling is empty behind the church, possibly Reverend Phillips. A loud tap on the door silenced him. Everyone froze. Blackwood. Through the thin wood, the landlord's voice roared. Open up! Samuel signaled quiet. He opened the door wide enough to enter the hallway, then closed it swiftly. His landlord, Mr. Miller, crossed his arms and frowned. I watched you bring them in. His words were unprefixed. Woman and kids. It wasn't our plan. They needed storm shelter, Sam explained. Limited to tonight, shaking his head, Miller. Not just that. Conway visited. He lowered his voice. He calls them beggars, possible disease carriers. Says you're harboring them against town ordinances. Sam's jaw constricted. They're a decent, struggling family. Her husband died recently. They want work, not grants. I don't care what they want. Mr. Miller replied. What counts is Conway threatened to call the sheriff if I don't act. Since you're evicted tomorrow, putting us out? Tonight? In this weather? Samuel couldn't hide his disbelief. Miller at least tried to appear uncomfortable. You have until morning. I want you. Then I left. Post Miller. Sam stood in the hall, mind racing. Where could they go? What could he do with no money, no prospects, and 6 dependents? He returned to the room. 6 eyes watched him intently. He faked a smile. No problems. He lied, ignoring Abigail's stare. Just misunderstanding. After the twins fell asleep, Emma snuggled on the bed with Abigail and Jacob. William on the pallet near them, Abigail muttered in the dark. What did he want? Samuel sighed. No need to lie. The dawn departure is necessary. Conway griped. Abigail was quiet for so long, Samuel believed she fell asleep. She finally spoke, barely audible. I must explain why we're here. In the dim light from the bank burner, Samuel raised one elbow to view her silhouette. My husband James wasn't just a farmer, Abigail explained. Slow, carefully chosen words. He was a Pinkerton detective. His final task took him to your town. Samuel frowned, confused. Here? Why? He investigated bank fraud, someone faking loan documents to exploit farmers and small businesses. She paused. Samuel, many like you, lost everything. Samuel's chest grew cold. Conway inhaled. Abigail nodded, although he could barely see anything in the dark. James became ill before reporting the evidence. So sick, so rapidly. Her voice faltered. His last commitment was to finish what he started. To deliver documents to the St. Louis regional office. You have them? The papers. Yes. Her voice fell further. Under Jacob's blanket. Conway must be suspicious. He's followed us since Springfield. Sam's head raced with the possibilities. If Conway committed bank fraud, he could have bought so many businesses so rapidly, including Samuel's shop. That's our purpose. Abigail continued. He stole your business and I needed to see him. Make sure it was James's man. Sam remembered Conway's coffee shop calculating expression, how quickly he complained to Miller. We must leave town, he urged. We can go someplace tonight? Samuel heard her dread for the first time when Abigail asked. Samuel wrapped his hand around his father's watch pouch. He stated he had a plan but needed to know something. Do you trust me? His hand met Abigail's in darkness. She had chilly, steady fingers. She replied simply, I do. Everything changed then. Gray and gloomy dawn dawned over the sleeping town. No one observed the 6 figures leaving Miller's Foot Store's back entrance and running for the town's livery stable. Only chimney smoke indicated that anyone was awake at this early hour, with streets empty and shops closed. Samuel carried infant Jacob to relieve Abigail's arms. William followed, shoulders squared with responsibility beyond his years. Emma moved forward with the twins holding her hands. "Are we gaming?" Emma whispered. "Why are we quiet?" Putting a finger to his lips, Samuel said, "A game. Quiet one's triumph." Emma nodded firmly and pursed her lips. The livery stable was ahead, its big doors locked against the morning frost. With what he was going to do, Samuel's stomach knotted, but he had no choice. Conway would likely have men watching the roads out of town to find them. "Wait here," he said, returning Jacob to Abigail. The infant stirred but didn't wake. Samuel approached the stable alone, relieved to see a light in the little office window. Hank Porter was awake as Samuel hoped. After decades of horse care, the old man never slept past 5. "Good morning," Hank Samuel entered softly calling. Hank looked up from his ledger, surprised. "Samuel, why are you here now?" Samuel carefully placed his father's gold watch on the desk between them. Hank's eyes expanded. "Your dad's watch? You vowed never to sell." Samuel just mentioned things change. "Need a cart and 2 horses." Hank turned the watch in his twisted hands. "This is worth more." Samuel lowered his voice and said, "I'm buying your silence," until midday, when the old man understood. He'd taught Samuel to bike as a child, rushing from and toward something. Sam corrected. "A chance." Hank stared at him before nodding. "Take the covered wagon and matched grays. Stable and powerful." Pocketed the watch. "No sooner than afternoon will I miss them. Thank you." The words didn't match Hank's risk. "Hank, your father was good. Helped me when nobody else would. Think about this repayment." He paused, then asked, "Whither to?" Samuel replied, "Better not know. A safer way." 10 minutes later, they were in the wagon. The Reed kids were ecstatic about this unexpected adventure. Samuel helped Abigail sit next him, watching how carefully she placed Jacob's blanket with its secret documents around the sleeping baby. "St. Louis?" Her question was silent. Sam shook his head. "Not directly. Conway anticipates it. South first, then east. Longer, safer." Samuel looked back at his hometown of 46 years as they left the stable. He was born, married, started a business, and lost everything there. Ahead was danger, uncertainty in the future. However, he felt more alive than in months. They took the less-traveled south route at a steady pace to avoid attention. The roads were muddy after the nighttime rain, slowing pace. They initially remained silent, watching for signs of pursuit. Emma ultimately diffused tension. She said she was hungry. Samuel's knuckles bled on the rough floors. The November wind howled through pine trees, masking William's panicked breathing as he squeezed against the cabin wall. 3 foreign guys lay scattered throughout the small room, one unconscious at the door, another groaning and clutching his stomach beside the fireplace, and the third backing away with hands up in surrender. "Sir," the third man pleaded, "we didn't know you had them. We thought it was a woman and kids squatting in Jake Medford's hunting cabin." Samuel's chest ached with exertion and wrath after days on the run, but seeing these men threaten Abigail and the children awakened a primal strength he didn't know he had. Samuel shouted, "Exit," pointing to the door. "Leave with pals. I'll break noses if I see you within a mile again." Nodding desperately, the surrendering man dragged his stomach-clutching friend to the door. "What about Davy?" he asked, gesturing to the unconscious man. "You've got 2 minutes to rouse him and get him moving," Samuel said, hands clenched. The following minutes were busy. The unconscious man was half carried by his buddies as they stumbled out into the twilight, cursing and splashing water. Samuel closed and barred the cabin door with a thick wooden board as they disappeared into the trees. He then faced the others. The primitive hunter's lodge included one room with a stone fireplace, a rough table with 2 benches, and a corner ladder to a platform loft. The Reed family crouched in the rear, William against the wall, the twins behind their mother, and Emma's face in Abigail's skirts. Luckily, baby Jacob was sleeping in a wooden crate cradle. "Are they gone?" William asked, his voice higher than normal, showing his dread despite his bold front. Samuel nodded, noticing his right hand's throbbing agony. "They'll leave." Abigail walked quickly and purposefully, She silently took Samuel to the table and poured their precious jug of water into a basin. She gently cleaned his bloody hand. "You shouldn't have fought them," she says quietly. "There were three. I should have done what?" Samuel winced as she placed a towel on his split knuckles. "Allow them to dump you in the cold? Or you could have died." Her straightforwardness lay between them. What if he died? What about Abigail and the kids? The children gasped when Abigail wrapped Samuel's hand with a strip from one of their few clean cloths, proving Conway's guilt. Her fingers were delicate but forceful, moving like a woman used to treating injuries. "How did you know?" she asked. "We were in trouble?" Samuel looked at the window, recalling the bone-deep confidence he'd felt after returning from hunting with the two bunnies now forgotten by the door. William shouted. William stood up from the wall. "I attempted to stop them like Pa." "In any case," they pressed. Samuel told him he performed well. "You warned Mom." She had time to grab Jacob and rally the girls. The boy's pride drove away part of his dread. Abigail whispered, "Those men, think Conway dispatched them?" Samuel thought about it. No. They were astonished when I said Jake Medford owned the cabin. They were probably drifters seeking shelter. He didn't mention hiring drifters to report sightings. Better not over-worry her. Finding the cabin was fortuitous. 3 days of difficult journey had taken them far from town. Mud roads and avoiding key roadways hindered their progress. Food was scarce. Their bones felt November's chill. The kids' delight had turned to tiredness and complaints. They found a little but sturdy cabin with a stone chimney, as if answering an unspoken request, tucked among pine trees. A faded sign on a neighboring tree said, "Private property, J. Medford." Dense dust inside suggested no one had visited in months. Abigail finished his bandage and suggested we should move on. If those men find it, others might too. Sam shook his head. "Not tonight. A storm is coming as it gets dark. First light, we leave." Rain began to patter on the cabin roof, quickly becoming a constant downpour to underscore his point. Wind howled through the trees, seeking every cabin wall, crack, and breach. Emma wrapped slender arms over herself and said, "I'm freezing." Samuel left the table. "Start a fire. Will you aid me, William?" Nodding earnestly, the boy seemed to grow taller with responsibility. They rekindled the intruder's fire with wood from the corner pile till flames danced joyfully in the stone hearth. The cabin warmed gently, restoring color to pinched faces. Abigail said she prepared their pitiful dinner, the last of their bread, and promised rabbit stew in the morning. Samuel climbed the ladder to investigate the loft at night. Not ideal, but warmer than the floor, a musty bearskin laid across uneven planking. He called down, "Children can sleep here." The space is tiny but usable. Samuel and Abigail sat by the fire after the children were settled in the loft. After nursing and falling sleepy, Jacob lay wrapped in his blanket, with critical documents buried in its folds on Abigail's pine branch bed near the hearth. No one spoke for a while. The fire crackled and rain drummed on the roof, filling the silence. Samuel examined Abigail's profile in the firelight, her stubborn jaw, her tired eyes, and her thumb-twisted wedding band. Finally, he stated we'd reach Jefferson City in 3 days. "Maybe for rain. We can then take the train to St. Louis." Abigail nodded, staring at the flames. "Next, present the evidence. Justice awaits Conway." "I meant afterward." She faced him. "After that, what happens?" Samuel was surprised by the question. He hadn't considered anything beyond getting Abigail and the kids to St. Louis and Conway punished. How would he proceed? He returned to a town without anything? Restart somewhere? Alone? They heard a sound from above before he could respond. A quiet scream muffled. "Mary," Abigail said, rising. "Sometimes she experiences nightmares." Samuel watched her climb the ladder to calm her daughter. Dark loft voices muttered, too low to read, yet the tone was relaxing and reassuring. Motherly voice frightens monsters. Abigail returned with a worried look. Her father summoned her in her dream. Her explanation was calm. "This happens often." Both twins were close to James. His loss hits them hardest. Samuel inquired, "How do you cope?" The question escaped him before he could stop it, too personal for their fragile relationship. Abigail didn't seem offended. She replied breathlessly, "I can't fall apart one step at a time." She hesitated, examining him. "How do you mourn Mary?" "Poorly," Samuel admitted. "Until lately, I wasn't sure I wanted to keep bearing it, comprehending their past, acknowledging shared pain. and the crushing weight of grief only those who have endured it can recognize. Abigail slowly said, "I was outraged, not sad, when James died. At God, at the physicians who failed him, and at James for abandoning me with 5 children and no house." She shakily inhaled, still angry some days. "I remember that portions of James live on when William says something like his father or Jacob smiles. Helps, somehow." Samuel considered Mary's quilt keepsakes. She was saved in bits. "It helps," he said, "though it hurts equally occasionally." They went silent again, lost in recollections. The storm grew outside, wind pelting windows with rain. A roof corner leaked, spilling water into a plant Abigail was holding. Finally, Samuel suggested sleeping. "Mud will make tomorrow hard." Abigail nodded but did not rise. "Samuel," she nervously said, "why are you doing this? Why risk everything for strangers?" The question had plagued him for days. Why did he give Emma his last coins? Why did he invite them to his room? Why did he flee across the state with them, hunted by a man who would destroy them all? He spoke softly after Mary died. "Something in me perished too. Not only love or joy, I had no reason to continue." Looking into the fire, he searched for words. Emma pleaded for help, and I felt needed for the first time in months. Like my actions mattered. "It matters," Abigail whispered. "Multiple times. You've saved us." Sam shook his head. "No, you saved me." A fireplace log shifted, sending sparks up the chimney. Though Abigail didn't cry, Samuel saw tears in her eyes in the sudden light. She rose from the fire and said, "We should sleep. I'll watch first." "No need." She intervened, saying that men may return with buddies. "It may be Conway's men next time. We must be cautious." Samuel couldn't dispute her logic. "Then wake me in 4 hours. Second watch, please." Samuel stretched out on the floor near the fire, using his coat as a pillow, while Abigail sat to watch the entrance and windows. Exhaustion drove him to sleep despite the rough ground and his fears. Before he lost consciousness, he felt a gentle touch. Mary's wedding quilt featuring love and memory patches. The fabric smelled of Abigail, blending with Mary's past and present in his visions. Deep in the night, a new sound joined the storm. Walking down the forest trail, hoofbeats approached the cabin and its sleeping residents. "Get up! Now!" Abigail's impassioned whisper and hard shaking woke Samuel. The cabin was dark. Burning embers cast more shadows than light. Rain pounded on the roof, but another sound soothed voices. Cold horses snorting, saddles creaking. "How many?" Samuel inquired, alertly scrambling to his feet. "4, maybe 5, Abigail answered, approaching the ladder, coming up the path. Samuel stopped her with his arm. "No time to run. Bring the kids to the root cellar." "What root cellar?" "A trap door is under the table. While looking for firewood, I found it." He was already removing the hefty table, revealing a square entryway in the flooring. "If you're silent, you'll fit in the small space." The lantern light flashed across the windows as the riders approached. Samuel heard bridles jingling and folks discussing their approach. "What about you?" Abigail requested while bending to lift the trap door. Musty air rose from the blackness below. Samuel grimly responded, "I'll handle them. Get the kids quickly." While Abigail woke the older children and brought them down from the loft, Samuel quickly gathered their stuff to erase the family's existence. A loud tap on the cabin door gave him time to take their things into the cellar and help Emma down the makeshift ladder. "Expand within." Samuel instantly recognized the voice and froze. "Albert Conway, go!" he pleaded with Abigail, who held Jacob to her bosom, the infant fortunately slumber. "Whatever you hear, be silent. Come out only when I say it's safe. Samuel, consider the stakes." She was chopped off. Those paperwork must reach St. Louis. Some exchange occurred. Fear. Determination. Another unnamed object. Abigail placed Mary's wedding ring on Samuel's palm. After whispering for luck, she dropped into the darkness and closed the trapdoor. Samuel quickly pushes the table back in position, then calms down. He combed his hair, rumpled his clothes to look like he'd been sleeping alone, and grabbed a fireplace gun. He knew unloaded, but Conway wouldn't. Harder beating followed. Final warning. "Open this door or we'll shatter it." Inhaling deeply, Samuel unbarred and opened the door, pretending sleepy perplexity that immediately turned into shock. "Conway," he said, holding the rifle lightly yet visibly. "Why are you here?" Albert Conway stood on the threshold, his costly coat pouring rain and his round face flushed with cold and exertion. 3 horseback riders behind him had hard-looking faces in the lantern light. "Blackwood," Conway said, surprised instead of smug. "I wasn't expecting you here, but I should have. Where else would she take her brats?" Samuel casually leaned against the doorframe. "What woman? I've been alone since leaving town." Conway squinted. "Play no games with me. Pinkerton's widow. According to my sources, she traveled with a man like you." He looked past Samuel into the cabin. "Where are they?" Samuel answered calmly, "I don't understand. Nothing left for me in town, so I departed. Visited my childhood hunting cabin. Living off the earth, he cushioned the gun, attempting to figure out my next move. One mounted man moved impatiently. "Mr. Conway, he lies. These drifters reported a mother and children mere hours earlier." Conway grinned coldly without looking at his eyes. "I don't think they left in these weather." He advanced, pushing Samuel to retreat or risk a fight. "Let's explore." Samuel raised the rifle. "I'd rather you didn't. Private property, but not yours," Conway replied. "Jake Medford owns this hunting cabin and owes my bank a lot. I have the right to inspect what may be repossessed." He clicked his fingers, and 2 mounted soldiers dismounted, hands hovering near their holsters. Samuel knew he was inferior. Several armed soldiers and an unloaded firearm were too much for him. He had to get Conway and his men out of the cabin so Abigail and the kids could escape. He stepped aside, saying, "Fine, watch all you want, know where to find." Conway and his troops entered. Walking around the small cabin, they checked corners and the loft. Samuel held his breath as one man approached the table, but the trapdoor was obscured by the heavy furnishings. "Samuel, just me. If you've satisfied your curiosity, please leave. Sleep is necessary for some." Conway walked slowly around the cabin, ignoring him. "Blackwood, why did you leave town so quickly?" He rubbed a shelf for dust with such intriguing company. "But then I realized you were on the bank board before your financial issues. Loan records correspondence was available to you." Samuel cursed internally but kept his face neutral. Conway fished, but perilously close to the truth. "I haven't been in that bank since they foreclosed on my shop," he added. "And I still don't know what woman you mean." Conway stopped his room tour in front of Samuel. Despite being several inches shorter, he looked down his nose with scorn. "James Reed," Conway whispered. "Does that name represent anything?" Trying to look confused, Samuel frowned. "Shall it?" "Pinkerton Detective James Reed visited our town earlier this year to investigate the bank. Unfortunately, Conway died abruptly of pneumonia." His smile was reptilian. "More unfortunate that his widow wants to keep working." Samuel casually added, "Sounds like a problem for you, unrelated to me." One man called from the loft, "Nothing up here, Mr. Conway, just dust." Conway never looked away from Samuel. Check outdoors, the stable, outhouse. They couldn't go far in this weather. Conway warmed his hands by the fire, while 2 men trudged back into the storm. "Blackwood, I always assumed you were smarter, losing your life for strangers." Shaking his head, "What would Mary think?" Samuel was furious when Conway mentioned Mary. He gripped the weapon with whitening knuckles. He warned against saying her name in a low, deadly voice. Conway smiled. He'd touched a nerve. So loyal beyond death, touching. He idly stroked the table. "Do you help Reed because of that? Affection transferred? Or something more practical?" He lifted eyebrows suggestively. "A widow with 5 children is a burden, yet desperate ladies help." Samuel lost control as Conway planned. The man was baiting him to tell the truth. He forced himself to breathe carefully, remembering that Abigail and the children might hear every syllable under the floorboards. Samuel advised leaving now, words trimmed and precise. Conway said, "Not until I find what I came for." Bent against the table, his weight creaked the aged wood. James Reed collected documents, fabrications, suggesting financial irregularities. In the wrong hands, these lies might ruin my reputation. He checked his manicure. "That's not allowed." Since their search was fruitless, the men grumbled outside. It was raining harder now, beating the roof and windows. Samuel considered distances, choices, and weapons beyond the ineffective rifle. Getting impatient, Conway straightened, saying, "Blackwood. The woman where?" Samuel admitted he was gone, left town days ago. "I suppose she stayed at St. Louis," or something flared in Conway's eyes. Possible uncertainty. "She was with you, maybe?" We traveled short in groups for safety, but we parted ways yesterday. Samuel shrugged. She was going somewhere. It was before Conway could reply. As the cabin door opened, one of his men ran in, wet and out of breath. Northbound riders are swift, Mr. Conway. At least 6. Conway frowned. Who would go outside in this weather? Not sure, but they're badged. The color left Conway's face. Understanding struck him as he looked at Samuel. You communicated. Samuel grinned. I'm smarter than you expected. A bluff. Samuel had sent no communications and had no idea who was approaching. He learned everything from Conway's reply. The banker feared being caught by the police away from his town and network. We must depart. To his guys, Conway snapped. What about him? Pointing to Samuel, he asked. With eyes calculating, Conway hesitated. Samuel felt the lender might kill him immediately. The sound of approaching horses seemed to decide him. Leave him. No point in bothering him. Samuel was blamed by Conway. This continues, Blackwood. Not even close. They fled into the downpour, mounted, and galloped away from the approaching riders. Samuel hesitated in the doorway, doubting their luck. These mystery saviors, who? Samuel's heart plummeted when the fresh riders appeared as Conway's party vanished. Instead of police, loggers approached with axes and saws. The cabin was scarcely seen as they passed, possibly traveling north to a lumber camp. Samuel awaited their disappearance into the stormy darkness. He closed and bolted the door, shaking with delayed reaction. He called Abigail quietly, moving the table quickly. Safe now, they're gone. 5 eyes stared at him from the darkness when he lifted the trap door. Abigail hugged Jacob. The older children clustered around her in the cramped room. She muttered, Conway gone. Samuel agreed, helping them up one by one. I thought police were coming. Pure luck. Abigail remained below as the children emerged, stiff and cold but uninjured. His words were heard. She whispered about me and you to Samuel. Samuel's face heated up. Snake Conway. Nothing he says matters. It matters what others think. Her tired but resolute eyes met his. Success will spark conversation. About us. You helped me because, Samuel just said, let them talk, holding out his hand. The truth is known. Abigail stared at his extended hand. She held on to her resolve and let him drag her into the firelight. Softly, she reiterated the fact. Yes, but when daylight came over the modest home in the woods, Samuel pondered what that truth was. Did he help Abigail and her children only for justice, or more? He hadn't acknowledged a connection, hadn't considered possibilities. Samuel felt something in his chest as Abigail comforted Emma, who was horrified by their close call. Though too soon for love, it could be the start of something powerful. Hope. He gently returned Mary's ring to Abigail's palm. Keep it, he said. We may need that luck. Their voyage continued. Conway remained a threat, and St. Louis was days distant. Samuel Blackwood looked forward to tomorrow for the first time since Mary's death. He wore his wedding ring on a leather string under his shirt. No longer a burden, it reminded him of a love that had taught him to live, give, and possibly love again. Men in suits moved purposefully down small halls at the St. Louis Pinkerton headquarters. Abigail Reed sat rigidly in a wooden chair, hands clasped in her lap. A silver-haired guy viewed James Reed's materials through wire-rimmed glasses across the desk. Smokestacks blew gray clouds into the wintry sky outside the frost-covered window. The man remarked, Mrs. Reed, carefully placing the papers, outstanding effort by your spouse. Falsified loan documents, illegal foreclosures, bank inspector bribery. Conway's crime is apparent. He removed his glasses and rubbed his nose bridge. But why didn't you show us these right after James's death? To reach this moment, Abigail's neck clenched. 2 weeks of hard travel, continual worry, and children with colds. Mr. Harrison, my husband died suddenly. I was broke, had 5 kids, and nowhere to go. Protecting my family was more essential than justice. At the door, Samuel observed Abigail's shoulders square against the implicit censure. He insisted on accompanying her to this appointment, while William supervised his siblings at the small boarding house where they'd secured lodgings. 3 days in St. Louis had allowed them to rest, eat, and wash away their journey's filth, but the future was unknown. And what altered your mind? Harrison kept touching the papers. Abigail glanced at Samuel before returning to Pinkerton. I realized James died unnaturally. Harrison raised his eyebrows. You think he was killed? The fever struck suddenly. Fast progress? Abigail explained, her voice firm despite unpleasant comments. Local doctor seemed nervous, uncomfortable. He didn't look at me when he said James was dead. Harrison said it's just suspicion, not proof. One day my husband was healthy, the next feverish. He informed me he had enough proof against Conway the next morning. Abigail responded, evidence that might imprison him. James planned to visit your office that week. Thinking, Harrison frowned. Probably poisoning. A new doorway voice claimed it would. All turned to see a tall, slim man against the doorframe. His clothing were simple but clean. Under his cap, his eyes were piercing. Harrison greeted Daniels, widow of James Reed. Newcomer Daniels nodded to Abigail and gave Harrison a telegram. Sheriff Taylor in Jefferson City sent this. They caught one of Conway's men bribing a train conductor for information about our friends. He pointed at Abigail and Samuel. Harrison hardened as he scanned the telegram. Conway ordered James Reed's medicine tampered with, he said. He gazed up at Abigail with remorse. Sorry, Mrs. Reed. Right you were. Stand behind Abigail's chair, Samuel. Close enough to feel his presence, but not too close to appear inappropriate. Although her back was straight and her face was covered, he could see her hands quivering. Now what? Samuel asks. Harrison glanced at Daniels. Harrison said agents will arrest Conway immediately. Samuel said these records and the confession should ensure he spends his life in prison and compensation. Mrs. Reed, whose husband Conway murdered, and the business owners he defrauded, including me, deserve restitution. Harrison cautiously replied that the courts will decide. Leaning forward, Daniels Pinkerton agency takes care of itself. In service, James Reed died. The envelope was slid across the desk to Abigail. This is his pension advance. It should help you settle. Abigail saw the envelope but didn't touch it. What about Mr. Blackwood? Her question was silent. Such documents would never have reached you without his assistance. With renewed attention, Harrison examined Samuel. We've heard of your help, Mr. Blackwood. Very good. I did what anyone would, Samuel responded awkwardly. Daniels disagreed. Most would have ignored someone with nothing to gain and everything to lose. Harrison tapped his desk contemplatively. Blackwood, the agency needs you. Someone who knows furniture and commerce, can recognize forgeries, and blends in. Jobs are available. Samuel was shocked by the offer. Him? Pinkerton detective? The idea appeared ludicrous until he thought about it. He always read people and details well. He had to return to what else. He looked at Abigail. Her expression was unreadable. Something happened between them. Unspoken query. I appreciate the offer, Samuel responded thoughtfully. I must consider it. Harrison nods. Of course. Until we find Conway, you must stay in St. Louis. Your testimonials matter. White snow covered the streets outside the Pinkerton office. Abigail followed Samuel silently. Her gloved fingers held the envelope, her thoughts far away. Are you okay? Samuel eventually asked as they approached the boarding house. He killed James. Her voice was hardly heard, I thought. After hearing it confirmed, Samuel wanted to comfort her, but kept his distance as they went along the busy street. Justice awaits Conway. Yes. She halted abruptly, facing him. Will you accept? Her straightforward question stunned him. No idea. New beginnings are possible, but what? How could he explain? The Pinkerton offer gave him hope, purpose, and stability, everything he needed. Accepting would mean moving frequently and leaving. What exactly? He had to leave what? The answer was unexpected. Leaving Abigail and kids. Finally, he responded, I'll go wherever they put me. Understanding flared in Abigail's eyes. Of course. They walked again. Silence now filled with unspoken words. They encountered commotion at the boarding house. Emma ran to greet them in the corridor, crying, Mama! William fights. Samuel and Abigail ran to their rooms to see William pinning another lad to the wall, angry white fists. The twins cried in the corner as Jacob moaned in his makeshift cradle. William! Abigail's voice snapped. Release him now, the boy agreed grudgingly. He kept his gaze on the other child, a red-headed boy of his age with a bloodied nose. He called us beggars. William spat. They said we don't belong. The red-headed boy retreated. My dad claims good people don't cross towns. Samuel positioned himself between the boys. He declared, "That's enough. Return to your chamber, young man." With a final glance, the boy fled. Samuel then looked at William, whose wrath was turning into embarrassment under his mother's disapproval. "I defended our family name," William persisted, but less seriously. "Pa would." Sam looked at Abigail, quietly requesting permission before continuing. He touched William's shoulder at her little nod. "Samuel remarked carefully that your father was valiant and righteous. He used his thoughts more than his fists. He became a detective to battle wrongdoing with intelligence, not force." William's resistance collapsed. "Are they going to catch Pa's killer?" Abigail said yes, holding the twins as their cries stopped. "Pinkertons are arresting him." Strongly, William said, "Good. Hope they hang him." Samuel and Abigail looked worried again. The boys' indignation was natural but too intense. Samuel and Abigail stood in the corridor between their rooms after the kids were calmed and fed. The boarding home was quiet, with most people asleep. "I worry about William," Abigail said. "It's unlike him to be angry." Samuel stated he's grieving and trying to be family man, 10 years old. Manhood shouldn't be required yet. Samuel agreed he shouldn't. After he hesitated, he told Abigail about Pinkerton. She softly stopped him. "You should agree. A decent chance." "Not so. We'll be all right." She proceeded without looking at him. "I can find us a place with James's pension, maybe in Springfield near my sister." "Do you want that?" Samuel questioned, assessing her expression in the dim hallway light. Abigail's smile failed to reach her eyes. "What I want doesn't matter. What important is helping my kids. What would that be?" Fingers twisted her wedding ring. An old nervous behavior, Samuel observed. "Her safety, stability, a good home," Samuel whispered. "I want all that for them." The stillness between them was dense with unspoken words. Finally, Abigail sighed. "It's late. We should sleep." Samuel nods. He talked again as she left. "Discuss what occurs after Conway is arrested, Abigail. About future." Behind him, she hesitated. "Yes," she said, barely audible. "Tomorrow." However, Samuel remained awake that night, staring at his leased room's damaged ceiling, wondering if his future could work. Two broken people with contrasting futures. The Pinkerton offer swayed him. Abigail and her kids changed his heart. By daybreak, he must decide. She would too. Pink light illuminated the train station platform, turning the snow rosy. Steam from the locomotive mixed with passengers' breath in the January cold. They included Samuel Blackwood, a tattered bag at his feet and cap pulled low against the cold weather. Harrison said, checking his pocket watch for the third time in 5 minutes. "You don't have to leave today. Another week till Conway's trial." Sam shook his head. "Better to record my testimony." Harrison looked thoughtfully down the platform. "I can only say farewell." Samuel saw them, Abigail, and the kids rush past the early crowd. His heart raced despite his neutral expression. "You told them," he said, annoyance evident. Unapologetic Harrison shrugged. "Mrs. Reed requested your whereabouts." No lying to a detective's widow. Emma ran past her mother and toward Samuel without regard for station propriety before Samuel could react. She skidded to a stop before Mr. Blackwood, crying, "Can't go. You promised checkers lessons." Samuel kneeled to her level, his planned parting words unraveling at her small face's pain. "That was my pledge, right?" William said. "You promised lots of things," arriving with his family. The boy seemed torn between betrayal and understanding. The conductor summoned all aboard. "Eastbound train leaves in 5 minutes," cleared his throat. "Leaving you to goodbye." With a nod to Abigail, he distanced himself. Samuel faced his family, which had grown so important to him so quickly. Twins held onto their mother's skirts, staring at him solemnly. Infant Jacob rested quietly in Abigail's arms, wrapped against the cold. "Why didn't you say you left?" Softly, Abigail inquired. She donned a new hat bought with James's first pension. However, her eyes still showed the strength and vulnerability that had drawn Samuel to her. He replied lamely to my letter. "A letter." Abigail spoke flatly. "After everything we've been through," Samuel looked at the train and then at the family. How could he explain? He spent the night debating impossible options, that witnessing Abigail and her children adjust to their Pinkerton pension and Springfield homecoming. He was convinced he wasn't in their future. Instead, he stated the Chicago office needed forgery help immediately. "Harrison suggested me." Abigail noticed your job acceptance. "Yes, William immediately advanced. Can you catch terrible guys like my father's killer? Samuel met the boy's focused look. I'll try, William. Good. Formally, William extended his hand. You can go, I suppose. Samuel accepted the handshake. His throat was constricted with hidden emotion. Take care of your mother and children. I will. A boy straightened his shoulders. I'm family man now, William read. Abigail gently chastised, you should appreciate being a boy. This was discussed. Samuel smiled at the interaction. He had seen Abigail transform from a distraught, fatigued immigrant into a confident woman with family plans in 2 weeks in St. Louis. She had a fresh determination, but her eyes still showed pain. Final call for eastbound passengers, the conductor yelled. Abigail responded, neutrally, you should go. Sam nodded, taking his suitcase. Emma wrapped her arms around his legs as he faced the train. Please stay with Mr. Blackwood, she pleaded, crying. Who will amuse us? When Jacob fusses, who will carry him? Mama seems sad, who will help? Abigail chastised Emma, blushing. Okay, enough. Samuel was frozen by the child's remarks, and the question repeated in his thoughts, forcing him to face the fact he'd been avoiding. In the weeks leading up to Conway's arrest and legal processes, Samuel became more involved in the Reed family's daily routine. He assisted William with his mathematics, gave the twins goodnight tales, and rocked Jacob to sleep when Abigail was exhausted. Small domestic moments that began to mend an inner wound. And then there was Abigail, their nighttime discussions after the kids were asleep, her rare laugh, her quiet power, and the increasing awareness between them that neither dared recognize. The conductor approached impatiently. Sir, boarding or not? Samuel watched the train and then the family with varied degrees of anguish and resignation. His Pinkerton job gave him purpose and a chance to improve his life. Chicago awaited, with its busy streets and faceless crowds that didn't know his mistakes. Springfield offered something different. When Samuel said, I'm not boarding, the conductor shrugged. Befit you. Moving away, he signaled the engineer. Samuel placed his baggage as the train left the station. Abigail's perplexity reflected his own. Don't understand, she said. I don't want the Chicago job. Samuel finished. Her eyes briefly flared with hope before caution returned. You want what, Samuel? The question was fraught with risks. Emma stopped crying and looked at the adults with curiosity. Even the twins recognized something significant. Carefully, their little faces turned. Samuel breathed deeply. Want to visit Springfield? Springfield, Abigail repeated, confused. No Pinkerton office there. Exactly. Sam took off his cap. A sincere act. Abigail, recent weeks. Working with Pinkertons taught me something. I don't want to chase criminals nationwide my whole life. Building something permanent is my goal. Her eyes slowly opened to understanding. You saying what? I want to visit Springfield. Open a furniture store. A real one, not repairs. I learned these talents from my father. He hesitated, then added gently, if you and the kids would welcome a neighbor. A neighbor? Abigail repeated. Her expression was unreadable. Samuel explained for now. I suppose till we know whether there's more. The station was silent. Smoke currently obscures the morning train. Snowfall resumed, fine flakes on Abigail's hat and eyelashes. Samuel? She started, then stopped, pondering. We barely know each other. I know, he said. I realize we're both too young. Your grief persists, James. And I? Mary? Finished for him. He nodded. I know I can't envision my future without you and the kids. I don't want promises, Abigail, just possibility. Emma pulled her mother's coat. Mama, may Mr. Blackwood join us? Please. William watched the exchange intently, neither supporting nor opposing. The twins muttered, their solemnity replaced by barely maintained eagerness. Abigail gazed down at her kids, then Samuel. Springfield grows, or she spoke slowly. A good furniture maker is needed. Samuel felt hopeful. Is that yes? A maybe? Abigail replied. But her lips curled in a smile that touched her eyes for the first time since he knew her. A possibility, you say? I can work with potential, Samuel smiled back. Harrison helped Samuel write a courteous denial to the Chicago office later that afternoon, and the Pinkerton agent laughed. Blackwood, you're going another way. Creating a ready-made family is difficult. Samuel replied that nothing worthwhile is easy, recalling his father's teachings. We're neighbors for now. Time will disclose the future. Harrison signed the letter, flourishing. I hope it works for everyone. Abigail was waiting across the street as Samuel left the Pinkerton office forever, snowflakes dancing in the twilight. Jacob wrapped in her arms. Her hand was raised in greeting, and he returned it, a gentle understanding. They took this journey step by step, two people who had lost everything finding strength in one other to start again. Instead of a fairy tale conclusion, a true beginning based on shared grief and hope, Samuel thought of Mary's bridal quilt, carefully wrapped in Abigail's baggage for Springfield. That those memories would cap this new chapter and carry the past into an unexpected future is fitting. He learnt that empty hands were valuable for what they might offer and sometimes receive, even when least expected.